best-selling author, researcher, former ambassador to the United Nations under Ronald Reagan. He needs no introduction. One of his websites is loyaltoliberty.blogspot.com. Got that up on screen as we simulcast the radio show on the web / as a TV show. He also writes for WorldNet Daily and other big publications. Unhealthy for Liberty is one of his latest pieces. He also has another great piece, Socialist Right and Left, Same Difference. And so we'll go over some of that with him today. A great political mind. And again, we're honored to have him joining us. Some stations just joined us, so I want to recap. We see the town halls, the people, Republican, Democrat, old, young, black, white, coming out and saying, we don't want this. And they have copies of the bill. They have the subsections. The Democrats for 3 weeks tried to lie, and even some Republicans did, and say, that's not in there, this isn't in there. Now they're having to admit all the things we said were in there that were in there and apologizing. How do we ensure that this resistance continues? Because as you just said, they're going to continue to come back probing. You know, they put the pressure on, we resist, they back off. I mean, give us your battle plan of how to not just hold them off, but actually regain some ground, because you know, Ambassador, we've lost so much liberty.
Well, I think that we have to be clear about what it is we're opposing, because I think that the president's overwhelming response to this health care program reminds me a little of what happened on the immigration bills when they were trying to destroy our sovereignty. You're not just looking at an opposition to specific proposals and elements. I think what happened is some of these things, particularly, for instance, the provisions that seem targeted at rationing care for the elderly, at setting up a system that would pressure people into accepting death and giving up therapy, side by side with provisions that might expand funding for illegal immigrants, which would therefore be being paid at the expense of our loved ones being encouraged to die. These things were rejected because they fundamentally offend conscience. They seem contrary to the American way of life and the understanding we have of the intrinsic worth of human beings. With that in mind, you look at the whole picture, there are the invasive elements that would take control, first of all, of the health sector, of the terms of remuneration of doctors and things of this kind. So they claim that it's not aimed at phasing out the private sector. Two things are true. Barack Obama himself, in his early career, explicitly said he was for universal single payer, right? And then it comes out a proposal that has elements in it that, yes, over the course of a little time, are going to push the system in that direction. And these elements are backed by the big corporate guys who are trying to get out from under the health care costs so they can have bigger profits. Are we all supposed to be stupid that we don't realize what's happening? Of course not. People do realize it.
Wow.
And then you look at what's going on overseas with Canada and Great Britain, these other examples, and it turns out that there is rationing, there is pressure for the old people, there are long lines, there is poor access, there is lower quality in terms of medical personnel and so forth. And so the notion that everybody's going to have access is countervailed by the fact that they'll have access to a worse system in which they'll get worse service, in which they will no longer have the sense that a whole bunch of people have in America, that when something goes wrong with you, it's dealt with expeditiously, right? That won't even be there. And so I think people are looking at this saying, wait a minute, this is not America. This is not how we live. And we have been relying on a system that, yes, has its shortcomings. You know, they say that we're supposed to let government take over 100% of our lives because we want to care for the 10% of people who they say don't have access to some kind of health insurance right now. That doesn't make sense. So I think a lot of people have begun to suspect the truth. The aim of this isn't to improve health care. The aim of it is to give that power to government over life and death and finances and privacy and personal decisions, so that we'll be in a position where we must hang on the decisions and words and power of the people in power, which gives them great control, so that they can remain in power at our expense. That is what totalitarian government is all about. That's what socialist takeovers are about. They use issues in order to achieve power. They're not really interested in the results.
Wow, Ambassador Ellen Keyes is our guest. Absolutely amazing how you just laid it all out. And everything you were saying there is true, because right in front of me today, ABC News and MSNBC and the New York Times in my stack, they spin it like it's good. And they go, look, the big insurance companies, look, the big doctors' unions, look, all these special interests are getting together with this $12 million ad package that the healthcare plan's good. And really that is all it is big corporations really want it so they can then have liability protection to not give people the care they've already paid for. And then the Congressman Conyers says they can't read a 1,300-page bill, but the government can then implement all our health care. I mean, they can't get anything right, and really they're just grabbing the whole industry for themselves. So I'd like you to comment on that. And then